Hello, my name is David Staskin, Chief Medical Officer for UroCure and Associate Professor of Urology at Tufts University Medical Center. Welcome to Monitoring Quality Improvement is the Path Forward, a discussion with Charley Rardin and Karen Richards, moderated by myself. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll put up the agenda while I introduce our guests. Dr. Charles Rardin is currently Professor of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the Warren Albert Medical School, Brown University. He's a former president of AUGS and played a key role in the development of the registry. Dr. Rardin was a resident at Beth Israel while I was a staff member in urogynecology, so if you don't mind, I may occasionally refer to you as Charley. Karen Richards is the Senior Director of Research and Quality at AUGS. Karen has extensive experience working with quality improvement programs, including 12 years with ACS's NISQIP, as well as the National Cancer Database and the National Trauma Data Bank, among various national accreditation and standard setting programs. Karen has also extensive expertise in EHRs, having served as Vice President at Modernizing Medicine, a healthcare technology and services company. Her knowledge and experience is a great asset to AUGS and its members as Acquire continues to roll out. Please submit your questions through the online portal during the presentation through the chat room. We will be available at the conclusion to answer your individual questions. Let's get started. Charley, can you give me some background history and the rationale behind the registry, specifically the importance of benchmarking stress urinary incontinence outcomes?
Sure, David. Well, several years ago, AUGS recognized the need for real-world evidence in the form of a quality improvement project. The driving force at the time for this was the controversy around mid-urethral slings. Despite the enormous amount of research, many thousands of patients involved in many randomized controlled trials, demonstrating the efficacy and characterizing the known safety issues around these devices, the story just wasn't translating clearly out into the real world. In general, measuring quality outcomes and improvement is increasingly demanded by healthcare providers, health systems, payers, and patients in the 21st century. For surgeons, the registry provides you a database to measure your outcomes, benchmark your practices and its outcomes in real time against your peers, and focus on opportunities for improvement. In the future, we really do believe that registry participation will become a standard for all practices and very likely a part of your recertification. Across all medical subspecialties, there's an increasing demand for this real-world evidence from payers, but also from regulators such as the FDA, who are very focused on the outcomes of our practices. Registries are often first cited by those groups when discussing examples of the real-world evidence they would like to see more often as they evaluate devices through their life cycle. Acquire SUI, with a large number of patient enrollments, will provide us a seat at the table in these important discussions. In fact, AUGS is collaborating with a public-private partnership known as MD EpiNet, which is also working to advance a national patient-centered medical device evaluation and surveillance system. The Acquire SUI-QI registry has been well received by this group. And finally, this form of real-world evidence is the best way to tell the story to a wider audience, by which I mean the lay public, news organizations, and the legal system. We need large-scale and broad participation from all of you to build this data set and improve care for our patients.
Thank you, Charley. Also, Karen has also been very helpful in explaining this. I had a great interest in this when we started working with Acquire. Charley, can you describe the difference between a quality improvement program and a clinical study? And is an IRB required for this type of QI program?
Yeah, I think that's an important question. I see it as a stepwise process. Research, capital R research, is performed under strictly controlled conditions with the informed consent of the subjects and patients. It's designed to test a very specific set of hypotheses about an intervention. But that rigid control, while it's scientifically critical, is also why the generalizability of the results to the real world has been limited. Research generates evidence, which should then be used to inform and build an evidence-based practice. A QI project, though, is the next and final part of this evaluation, where it's the practice, which in this case includes the techniques and devices offered to our patients, is scrutinized for consistency, its outcomes, and opportunities for improvement. And unlike research, which has to wait until the final patient has completed the predetermined follow-up before any analysis can begin, QI projects have the requirement to provide real-time information to guide, refine, and improve the practice itself. The Acquire Registry was built as a QI project, not a research endeavor, from the beginning. As I said, a QI project assesses a practice, not an experimental intervention, so the patient risk is considered minimal. OGS has reviewed the structure and the stated purpose of the Acquire SUI-QI Registry alongside the federal regulations on human subjects research and has concluded the registry meets the definitions of quality improvement and does not require IRB review. Now, having said that, IRBs are local entities and they can make their own determinations. You'll need to determine if and in what form IRB review is required by your practice or at your hospital. It's my experience that initiating your inquiry within your hospital in the quality department is the most efficient as the quality departments have prior experience with QI registries, which can better assist you in your analysis of how and in what manner to approach your hospital's IRB.
Excellent. And I think that's a really great suggestion about starting with the QI department and having them help and guide you and work with you to do that. Karen, what are the goals of Acquire SUI Quality Improvement Program? How's this been set up?
Sure. So Acquire really aims to track and monitor quality improvement activities of interest really to the UroGyn field. The overarching goal, I guess you would say, is for multiple stakeholders, providers, regulatory bodies like the FDA, as Charley mentioned, and device manufacturers like UroCure to efficiently use the data collected from Acquire to not only improve the quality of care, but to use it for regulatory requirements and post-market surveillance. Acquire is unique as well in that it incorporates patient-reported outcomes to help us better understand the outcomes of interest to our patients. And the quality improvement program as a whole sort of has two prongs to it. One is really providing benchmark reports to surgeons that they can use as a quality assessment tool that will allow them to monitor their outcomes and to identify areas that they feel they need to improve upon. And it also gives us the ability to use real-world evidence to compare long-term clinical outcomes for the most commonly performed procedures. So it allows us to look at the efficacy of certain procedures, to compare devices, procedures, et cetera. So it's, has a multiple uses, and we find that this is something that as we grow and expand the list of procedures that we're going to include in Acquire will have more and more value, not only to our providers, but to device manufacturers and regulatory bodies as well.
Great. Karen, you've had extensive work with NSQIP, as we said in the introduction, and other quality improvement initiatives. I believe OGS put together a document which helps explain the background and purpose of Acquire, which is useful both in navigating the hospital issues, which we addressed, and just as a basic understanding as someone's getting involved. How do you think this document can help sites as they approach the QI committees and IRBs? And what additional support can your team at OGS do to provide support to the sites?
Sure, great question. So the document that we put together is really a background document that provides helpful talking points that physicians can use within their own institution to answer questions that they may get from the various areas that they need to vet the proposal to participate through. So it's really something that we've developed based on what other sites have told us has worked for them. So it's sort of a best practices document. So we think it's pretty helpful. We're seeing sites use it now, and it seems to help to mitigate some of the challenges that they've had in the past. In terms of help, we are there every step of the way. We're there to answer any questions, to work through the contract various scenarios, as well as really being able to answer any sort of pre-boarding, onboarding questions, as well as helping through the onboarding process onto the actual platform.
As you know, UroCure has been working with Acquire to have our sites enter all of their patients as a way of us monitoring our rollout, but also because we strongly believe in this. quality improvement initiative. So we've had feedback, and it really supports what you just said. Can you explain the process to become a site and who needs to sign these agreements?
Sure, sure. So once a site has reached out to OGS to tell us that they're interested, we're going to send them a couple of different documents that they need to vet through their institutions and have signed off on. So there's pretty much three main agreements that would need, or three forms that would need to be filled out. One is our participation agreement, which is really an agreement between OGS and the participating site or practice that includes details around data collection, data ownership, how the data can be used, etc. Then there's what we call a site administrator form, and that's really letting us know who at that site really has the ability to add users, remove users from the system, and sort of do the day-to-day management of the data registry. And then the third, if you happen to be working with, say, UroCure and you're part of the UroCure network, then they would also need to fill out a network agreement as well. And as I said before, we're happy to help and work through all of those pieces with any site that's interested. In terms of sort of the two processes, in a private practice, it's obviously a little easier. You can go to the, head of the practice and they can easily sign off on the paperwork that's needed. Obviously a much quicker process usually than what we would see in a larger institution. So for private practice, pretty simple, get the buy-in and signatures of the heads of the practice group. For an institution, say for like Charley's institution or someone else's, you're going to really need to go through all of the different vetting processes that you normally would go through, similar maybe to when you have a grant or some other kind of program, and go through, the quality department, the clinical research, your IRB potentially. And so it's really helpful. What we've found in the past, and I know from my experience with NSQIP, is to really look and see if there are other champions within your institution who have done a similar type of quality program, like a NSQIP, like a SVS or bariatric or some other kind of quality initiative where they're already in tune with the processes they went through to get the approvals necessary. And so they may be really helpful in providing background and ideas of how to more expeditiously move the acquire participation agreements through their system. Once they've done all that and get the appropriate signatures from their institution, either the private practice or the larger institution will return those back to OGS. We'll fully execute them, return them, and then we'll get you started on the platform.
So in a way, it's hopefully something less and with all reason, nothing more than the normal type of paperwork in order to join a quality improvement site based on whether you're in private practice or you're at an academic institution. Thank you very much, Karen. That was very informative. Charley, as we know, making data entry simple for the registry is a key. Once you get past the initial paperwork, which people have done for other studies they've been in, it's how much work is it going to be for me? What type of data are we going to collect? How long it's going to take? Who's going to do it? Et cetera, et cetera. And I know that you were very involved in trying to simplify this from the previous OGS registry. What did OGS do in the design of this to make sure that it's simple and easy?
Yeah, David, you're absolutely right that we had to do a 180-degree turn from the PFDR, the Pelvic Floor Disorders Registry, which was a massive undertaking of something like 700 fields and took many dedicated people for data entry. The short answer of what we did is we imagined ourselves putting it in real time on our way out of the OR, really having to winnow down. That question is kind of interesting, but not interesting enough to make it into the registry. We're really thinking about what if it's me that has to put that in as data entry. Eventually, and we're working hard at streamlining the interoperability with EHRs, this will get better, but we built it from the ground up as being usable in real time by the surgeon in the OR or in the office. The SUI was built that way, and it's easy for the physician and the patient. Data entry involves 5 to 9 yes or no or multiple choice questions at any one of the time points. Patient questions are emailed directly to the patient, which is really two important things that happen there. First of all, it's not a burden to the office to deal with the questionnaire data that comes directly from the patient. But the quality of the data that we get is that much better because the registry communicates directly with the patient. So in those instances where a patient moves or doesn't decide they want to go back to that surgeon anymore, the registry doesn't lose that patient. We still get that patient's information. So that really boosts the quality. It also decreases the burden on the staff. Follow-up is at 6 weeks, 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years if you're seeing them at those time points. The follow-up does not require a patient visit, as we talked about, because it communicates directly with the patient themselves.
Excellent. And Karen, not that I don't trust Charley, because I do, but can you give us a brief demonstration of the look and feel of the registry? I mean, 5 to 9 multiple true, false, or yes, no, and multiple choice questions. No one should say, this is too much of a burden for me not to participate in a quality assurance, quality improvement registry. So why don't you run us through a few of the sample questions so that people can really see what a great job OGS did with this.
Sure, I can share a few slides with you. Let me see if I can go ahead and share my screen with you. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, great.
Seamless.
So this is our, just want to show you quickly, this is our case report form, or CRF, that we use. And this is actually a paper form. And the reason I'm showing it is because oftentimes, depending on your workflows, you may find that it's easier to put something on paper and have someone else do data entry later, though you can most assuredly go directly into the Acquire platform and enter your data directly. But this is another way that some of our sites find easier to do for themselves, to have somebody else do the data entry. So this is just some of the basic information. As Charley said, it's very quick. You just check these little boxes and put in the information. This is the actual sort of home page for going into the Acquire registry platform. As you can see, there's 3 portals here. The first on your far left is the patient portal. And when a patient receives an email, they're going to be pushed to that portal. They'll go in and they'll actually answer a few questions, and that's how they would get in. And I'll show you more on that in a minute. The middle portal there is really the provider portal, and that's where a provider is going to go in, and it's going to be their home area for putting in their data. And then on the far right, you'll see data management or administration. That's where at a particular site, the administrator would go in and put in, who has access to this system, who can enter data, et cetera, and who can manage the data that's then in there. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you what it looks like for a provider. So this is the provider's sort of home screen once they're in. In the center, you'll see a red arrow there, and you can click on a link there that's going to take you to a user manual that explains everything within the registry or the Acquire platform, so that you can figure out anything you need to know on your own if you don't have the resources around you to help at a particular moment. It's right there at your fingertips. Over on your left-hand side, you'll see a home button, a questionnaires, and a patient record. The patient records are where you're going to go in and actually enter the data on a particular patient, see a list of your patients, and be able to query those patients as you like to see which records you still need to complete, who's due, etc. And questionnaires are really our surveys. Those are the follow-up surveys that Charley just mentioned. So this is actually for a patient, a fake patient, that had a consultative visit. And as you can see, there's 3 very quick forms for that patient to have filled out. And when they're done, they're marked as complete. So you can see the demographics one here is already complete. There's also an ICIQ and a short one that has perioperative information. So I'm going to show you just the ICIQ. This is actually a completed record, but for a patient that didn't do an ICIQ. But very quick little questions where you'd say yes or no. Here's a sample here of a surgical form. And so as Charley said, you just go in very quickly, answer these questions and move on. So there's, these are 3 of the 5 or 6 questions that are there for the surgical piece. And so you can see there are quick yes and no questions, as well as, the type of procedure that's performed here spells it out for you. You do a quick click and move on. This is just a sample of what the 6-week provider follow-up form looks like. So this is what a provider would do, and they'll get a notification that this is due for them for a particular patient. They'll go in and fill this out and move on. And as I said, we have a patient portal. And so when a patient goes in, they're going to say, start my questionnaire. They're going to click on this. It also provides them with other resources. They can get information about pelvic floor disorders. They can reach OGS. They can do a number of different things. And as we grow, we're going to be adding more and more information to that patient portal that may be of interest to our patients. And this is just a quick screenshot of their first survey where they would answer a couple of quick questions. As you see here, since your surgery, have you used estrogen in your vagina? Yes or no. Do you currently smoke? Yes or no. So it's very quick, very simple for our patients to answer their follow-up surveys. And if anyone is interested in joining Acquire, I just wanted to put up our email address here and show you. Just reach out to acquire@augs.org.
Karen, just a quick question that actually came in. I usually wait till the end, but it's relevant now. If a patient doesn't have a computer or an email, will AUGS still be contacting them by mail with a paper form?
We do not contact by mail. However, if the patient is in contact with the physician's office, the physician's office can work with them to complete those surveys.
Very good. Thank you. Also, Karen, Charlie mentioned that there's the patient component that you just showed. And just to repeat that, there's nothing done on the part of the site other than to facilitate patients that may not have email and a computer, where they might come in for an office visit at a year and fill out the form. But anything else that we need to know about that? The AUGS does the patient contact, no work on behalf of the site.
Actually, it's the software that does it, so which is even better. So
Okay.
no, once a site enters in a patient and enters in their email, the Acquire software platform automatically sends a follow-up survey to the patient at the appropriate time point, whether it's the 6 week, 1 year, the 2 year, etc. So all they do is get the email, click into the portal, answer those few questions, and that's it.
Excellent. Charlie, as you know, UroCure has made a real commitment to the registry, first as a sponsor, but more importantly, we have committed to registering all of our initial cases in the registry, which we can control through our product distribution. So we've committed to support AUGS's registry enrollment effort with a grant to AUGS. One unique aspect of UroCure's sponsorship is that we enable AUGS, if a site is one of our sites, to compensate the sites for their data entry efforts, not only for our sling, but any commercial product performed at that site. What's your reaction to this type of commitment on the part of UroCure? You're muted, Charlie. There you go.
I think it's very important for people to understand as we enter this kind of relationship. Firstly, and to be very clear, I'm here as a representative of AUGS. I have no financial relationship with UroCure or with any of the other manufacturers that might be involved. And by the same token, I acknowledge that UroCure has made a commitment to a scientific product, a quality improvement product, which they don't control. They weren't part of the building process. They don't control the data. This belongs to the registry. We work on these things together, but I think that, for the 20 years that I've been involved with AUGS, the relationship between physicians and with industry has been looked at somewhat askance. It's been a source of skepticism. And I really think we're entering a new chapter here. Clearly, the FDA, MD EpiNet, all the other partners in the public-private space view this sort of relationship and collaboration not just as positive, but as absolutely essential for building a real-world evidence infrastructure that's sustainable and effective. Now, you mentioned about the way that a site can participate as a site within a network. The registry has a hybrid design. We very much are looking for individual surgeons and practices to participate for the benefits of benchmarking and QI that we've discussed. But it's also very important that we generate a large volume of enrolled patients. So we have a network of sites that was competitively developed through an RFA process run through our scientific committee. Our industry partners also have the opportunity to support such a site, submitted to and vetted by the Acquire committee itself. Our agreements very clearly state, as you point out, that such sponsored sites would be expected to use more than a single SUI procedure or device, not just the device from that manufacturer, and would be reimbursed equally for each and every patient enrolled, regardless of which device or technique was employed on that patient. We're really excited to see this new form of collaboration between a variety of public, academic, and industry partners, all focused on obtaining real-world evidence over the entire device lifecycle.
And I think it's important to also note that it's not just devices when we're looking at all SUI surgeries really within the Acquire registry.
Right. This is a condition-specific, not a device-specific registry.
Thank you to both of you, Charlie and Karen, for joining me for this session. UroCure is excited to be partnering with AUGS. I know everyone at UroCure shares the Acquire registry mission to advance quality care by tracking surgical outcomes. Finally, let me remind you to visit our UroCure virtual booth to see the ARC-TV transvaginal sling. I believe we are ready to take your questions now. And let's see, I know we answered the first one. Charlie, you may have said this, but maybe stressing this is for all stress surgeries, not slings. And Karen had mentioned that. How's the patient info protected given that their email address and name is in the system? I'm thinking not only about their privacy, but also about the issue of patients getting calls from those folks suing device manufacturers. Karen.
Put me on the hot seat, huh? So we do collect patient PHI, and we do in our agreements with the particular sites and with any other entity that we have an agreement with, whether it's UroCure or someone else, do have very strict language around how that data can be used, how it can be collected, et cetera. So at present, everything we do meets, with all of the HIPAA regulations. In terms of
just the secure site idea about how the data is stored, and the idea
right,
that if someone made a request to AUGS, this is set up as a QI registry, and it's sort of an impermeable barrier to anybody getting information.
Correct.
Charlie, do you have a comment on that? Because I know you've dealt with some of these issues.
Yeah, I think that part of our learning curve in this was that very point, and Mark Preston brought up that very important point, that what AUGS has done is to recognize that even though our vendor, which is fire compliant, HL7, all the technology, some of the blockchain stuff that I've been sort of recently learning, like drinking from the fire hose, but it's really the highest tech of this sort of cybersecurity. But having said that institutions such as my own, looking at an agreement where they might find themselves in the unlikely event of some sort of breach, be the institution responsible for it. So AUGS has gone back and really significantly increased its indemnification so that it can itself take the responsibility away from the institution, again, in the extremely unlikely event of some sort of data breach. But otherwise, we do consider this essentially an impenetrable firewall, and we treat this, this sort of information as valuable as it truly is.
Excellent. Any closing comments, Charlie, generally, or Karen? Anything you'd like to say? We have a minute.
I just want to say that here in this country, we have the luxury of approaching this sort of registry style because we want to and because it's the right thing. In other parts of the world, they had to build this to get slings back. And that really is sort of the lay of the land in a lot of parts of the world. So we figured if it's going to be thrust upon us at some point, let's have it be a product that we build, that we like, and that will actually answer the questions that we want.
Karen?
I think Charlie just said it all.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I had once asked whether for the AUGS board, whether they thought that eventually for recertification that participation in a registry where you're able to list your case and discuss your outcomes through a quality improvement point of view would be required. In other words, you wouldn't be asked to submit a case list. You'd be submitting a case list all along, which in an interesting way It's much easier than the way I did it in order to find out all my cases for my recertification. So I think this is going to be a valuable tool. I'd encourage people to participate in it, and you're able to download and look at not only your individual outcome, but also your outcome compared to what your peers are showing. So I think it's a valuable experience. Again, I encourage everyone to both participate through Acquire and to take advantage of our UroCure participation for launching ARC TV. So again, thank you very much. And for people who are watching, please enjoy the meeting.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.